My name is Jamie McGlasson. I am 44 years old. I am a school administrator in Porterville, California, which is a farming community in the San Joaquin Valley in Central California. Officially, I was diagnosed in 2013, but like many Parkinson's patients, the symptoms took place before then. Probably about 2 years prior to that, I was going through a pretty busy summer. I was up in Oregon. My wife was away out of country. We were moving into a new home, and I was starting a new job when I first experienced the tremors for the first time. And so naturally, I assumed that it was some type of stress or anxiety. And so that began the process of me trying to self-medicate, trying to self-regulate my emotions, and I eventually began going into some therapy as well. And actually, it was a therapist who said to me, you know what, I just don't know if I've ever seen anxiety manifest itself on just one side of your body. And so after that, I went and made an appointment with a neurologist in town. She diagnosed me with Parkinson's disease, and then a short time later, my wife and I planned a trip to the Stanford Medical Clinic where they confirmed the diagnosis, and that was on December 23rd, 2013. I was officially diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease. I will say this, the tremors, the shaking is actually becoming probably one of the least problematic parts of Parkinson's. I'm on 6 different medications, 3 of them for shaking, and the medications are doing their job. They're doing exactly what they want to do. I had told my wife about 3 years ago, I said, I just want the shaking to stop. And so I made a deal with the pharmaceutical devil, and the medications are working, and I'm thankful for that. But there are other manifestations as well, which often gets overlooked, either as a result of Parkinson's or as a result of the medication. There is insomnia, there is sleep fragmentation. I am regularly awake at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's been going on for about 9 months. There's depression, there's apathy. There are just a number of things that I don't think that the common person knows about. And I can tell you that I don't, some of the most meaningful relationships in my life have been affected by Parkinson's and have been affected by the apathy that Parkinson's has caused. Just a general disinterest in, a perceived disinterest in the relationships, a perception that I'm not as engaged as I used to be, and I've noticed that with a number of my close relationships. You know, I was talking to my therapist, and she often asks me, well, how does that feel knowing that you have Parkinson's? And it's funny, there are days like this where I have Parkinson's and the medication is doing what it's supposed to, when I don't even think of it a lot. And then there are days when I'm much more discouraged, and I realize that the best that any Parkinson's patient can hope for is maintaining, and that's when it gets discouraging. You don't hear of Parkinson's patients going through remission or regressing in their symptoms. So at this point in my life, at this juncture, at this season, the best that I can do is maintain, with the full understanding that it will get worse as I get older. You know, I alluded to it a moment ago, but there is clearly a whole different side of Parkinson's than the tremors. And that's the part that is so organic and so nebulous and so vague and difficult to put a handle on. A lot of my relationships have been affected by the apathy. I'm on a medication for depression, which causes other side effects like weight gain and yawning and muscle joint pain. I think typically I'm a dark person anyway. I've struggled with depression oftentimes, but if it's not the depression, then it's the apathy that seems to be the difficult part. And again, when you combine that with the fact that many Parkinson's patients have sleep fragmentation, where they will sleep, wake up, go back to sleep, or they are suffering from insomnia, it's just a perfect cocktail of fatigue and depression and not having clarity of thought. And so those are the things that have been difficult for my wife, for those closest to me, and for myself as well. Yeah, since I began struggling with the symptoms of Parkinson's, I've seen 4 different mental health professionals or counselors. The first one was very helpful, and even though at that time I felt like it was more anxiety driven than anything else, it was useful for me because she was going with the mindfulness track, and she opened me up to the idea of mindfulness, and that was huge for me. And I would suggest that there's a lot of value in the idea of teaching anyone to be mindful, to be present with their experience, and not to come at it with any type of preconceived idea. And it was simply the distance that caused me not to continue to see that particular mental health professional. But there's the second one who actually ended up helping me with the diagnosis. He was a behaviorist, and he was the one who acknowledged that anxiety rarely manifests itself on one side of the body. And so as a result, he referred me to a neurologist here in town, and I shared that story with you. The third one was an attempt for me to get back into the swing of talking about my diagnosis with someone. And this gentleman was probably the one I was most frustrated at. I wanted specifically to work with a male, and it did not go well. I don't think that he was empathetic. He disregarded the understanding of apathy as a coping mechanism. He wrote off the depression as, sure, I would be depressed too if I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And it seemed to me that he was trying to push his own agenda, and I told him point blank from the very beginning what my criteria was. I simply needed someone to listen to me who was somewhat familiar with Parkinson's and who could be a listening ear. And you would think that criteria in the mental health profession would not be too hard to meet. And this gentleman had a hard time meeting it. He was pushing an agenda of EMDR, something with the eyes. And at that point, and even at that point, he wasn't prepared for it. He was reading from a script from a binder where there are long pauses, where he was turning pages. There was one session when I told him, I don't think you were prepared for me, for my session today. And he disregarded that. And I called him on something else a second time in that same session. And after that, I just never returned to him again. And then finally, the distance was becoming problematic for me, and so I decided, I don't care. My city is a small city. I'm well known, but I want to go to someone here in town. And I'm going to a mental health professional who was wonderful. And what struck me the most, I gave her the same criteria over the phone. What has struck me the most is that she has researched Parkinson's. She has come to me with names and articles and links and her own discoveries and her own questions. She's being proactive, at least in her understanding of what it must feel like to have Parkinson's disease. And she has been fantastic. She has been a listening ear, which is all I wanted to begin with. But as far as an interaction with a client, my initial reaction would be, you've got to ask questions of the person. I think the person is so eager and so desirous to talk to someone about Parkinson's who's not a family member, who's not a loved one, who's not going through their own grieving. We are desperate to talk to someone. Secondly, and I alluded to it before, the idea of a mental health professional coming to a session and acknowledging that they have done some research, that is huge. My current therapist told me from the very beginning, I don't know a lot about Parkinson's, but I'm going to find out more about it. And it's been fantastic. And as I shared, she has come back with some great resources. And then finally, I would suggest explore the apathy. Depression has a lot of literature and research behind it, and we know that there are medications that are useful for depression. Apathy is a completely different animal. I don't need a medication to make me, to bring me down. I'm already pretty apathetic as it is, and that needs to be addressed somehow. How do I deal with my loved ones when I just don't care? And I don't know if there's an answer for that.